Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. Upton Sinclair said, "It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it." And here is a classic example of that from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They say that the last time carbon dioxide levels were this high in the atmosphere, between 4.1 and 4.5 million years ago, sea level was 78 feet higher than it is now, and Earth's temperature was 7 degrees warmer. They also stated that trees occupied areas of the Arctic which are now tundra. In other words, the last time carbon dioxide levels were this high in the atmosphere, Earth's climate was very different than it is now. A good scientist would conclude from this information that carbon dioxide does not control the climate. Temperatures are much cooler now than they were the last time CO2 levels were this high. If carbon dioxide did control the climate, we would expect the temperatures would be much warmer than they are now. Now let's go back in time 6,000 years ago when carbon dioxide levels were much lower. When Stonehenge was built, the Arctic was probably ice-free, and temperatures in the Arctic were much warmer than they are now. July temperatures along the northern coastline of Russia may have been 2.5 to 7 degrees Celsius warmer than they are at present. And trees grew all the way to the edge of the Arctic Ocean. At present, the tree line is about 100 kilometers further south. We have a couple of data points now showing that when carbon dioxide levels were comparable or lower than they are at present, temperatures were much warmer. A good scientist would conclude from that carbon dioxide does not control the climate. There was little or no Arctic sea ice when Stonehenge was built, but right now Arctic sea ice extent is right at the 1981 to 2010 median. And in fact, there's been no trend in Arctic sea ice extent over the last 15 years. Earth's temperature right now is about 0.1 or 0.2 degrees Celsius above the 1979 to 2000 average. There is no evidence that the Earth is overheating. The combination of historical and modern data doesn't support the claims which Noah is making in this article. This is imaginary science, and at the bottom here they have an imaginary solution. They say the solution is right here before our eyes. Solar energy and wind are already cheaper than fossil fuels, and they work at the scales that are required. If we take real action soon, we might still be able to avoid catastrophic climate change. There's no evidence that we're headed towards catastrophic climate change, and even less evidence that solar energy and wind power have anything to do with climate. And even worse, NOAA is promoting disastrously poor policy. 11 months ago, the United Kingdom announced they were going to end all coal power by the year 2024. But then, 2 months later, they reversed course. Britain was forced to reopen a coal-fired power plant. Energy prices have spiked to a record high in Britain after calm weather shut down the country's wind turbines. You can't run a country off of wind power because wind is not reliable. And now the British government is talking about keeping their coal-fired power plants running. Britain's disastrous lurch towards green energy has left 4 in 10 Brits facing fuel poverty. NOAA is promoting ideas which are not only junk science, but they're also a humanitarian disaster. For the past 30 years, Western governments have been making these fake climate agreements which have had no impact on the growth of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The use of fossil fuels in Asia is skyrocketing. They don't have any interest in the Western climate scam. China is doubling down on fossil fuels and ramping up their coal production to record levels. All of the virtue signaling by Western politicians like Joe Biden are doing nothing other than crushing the poor and middle class with high energy prices. Even as Western governments are trying to crush their poor and middle class, the Chinese government is trying to help their own people. And of course, the New York Times is doubling down with their own climate evil. They say that China's efforts to keep their country running are putting climate goals at risk. What China's doing has nothing to do with climate. The climate emergency is strictly a Western neurosis. I'm going to end this video with one more quote from Jonathan Swift, which explains the irrational behavior of Western governments. "It is useless to attempt to reason a man out of a thing he was never reasoned into." Western governments are making completely irrational policy decisions which are not based on science. they're not based on history, and they're definitely not based on rational thought. Toto has been pulling back the curtain on this madness for the past 14 years. You can visit him, Curie, and Caesar on the web at realclimatescience.com.